Ah yes, Alberta Separatism, the reoccurring fantasy that the province should be free to form its own country. It's nothing new. It's a conversation that started in the 1930s and tends to flare up whenever oil prices crash, Ottawa delays a pipeline, or in this case, the Liberals win an election. And granted, some of Alberta's frustration is real, things like equalization payments, federal overreach, etc. But most of it is just political steam from people who haven't yet realized that the world is slowly moving on from carbon-based fuel, and that clinging to the past won't stop the shift towards carbon accountability or environmental responsibility. And their solution of separating is reckless, unconstitutional, and proudly oblivious to Indigenous land rights and economic reality. Still, that doesn't stop the loudest voices from shouting like they've already drafted a new constitution on a bar napkin. So allow me to kill that buzz with some facts. First of all, even if Alberta holds a referendum and the majority of people, which is unlikely, vote yes to leave, it doesn't mean Alberta gets to automatically grab a Sharpie and redraw the map. According to the Supreme Court's 1998 ruling on Quebec, a yes vote wouldn't mean independence. It would just trigger a long, messy negotiation with Ottawa, the provinces, and every Indigenous nation with land in Alberta. That's a lot of people with veto power. And, fun fact, Alberta doesn't actually own most of its land. Around 60% is Crown land, which legally belongs to the federal government. The province is just the property manager. Holds the keys, but not the deed. Thinking Alberta can just claim it all outright is like thinking your local Apple store manager can just declare they now own Apple. Cute, but not how it works. One of the biggest holes in the separatist pitch, gaping, really, is the complete lack of a plan for Indigenous land rights. Alberta is covered by numbered treaties signed between First Nations and the Crown, not the province. These aren't suggestions. They're constitutionally binding under Section 35. And no, they don't magically disappear just because Alberta decides it's suddenly a sovereign nation. Alberta can't form a new country on land it doesn't even control. And even if Ottawa did hand over all the Crown land gift wrapped with a pretty little bow, Indigenous nations have already said they're not tagging along for the ride. They've got the Constitution and the United Nations in their corner, which means Alberta, as we know it, couldn't separate. It would have to first carve up its borders and figure out what's actually left of the province. Any separatist plan that skips over that inconvenient truth isn't bold. It's delusional and headed straight into a legal meat grinder with a multi-billion-dollar price tag. Separatists also love to claim that Alberta would be rolling in cash if it just stopped sending billions of dollars to Ottawa. And sure, that might be true until reality kicks in. Political instability scares off investors. And Alberta's biggest trading partner is, inconveniently, the rest of Canada. So going solo would mean tariffs, tangled supply chain, and ballooning costs. And let's not forget, Alberta has no central bank. Would it whip up its own currency? Peg itself to the US dollar and cross its fingers? Going all in on Bitcoin, perhaps? Meanwhile, it still owes its share of Canada's debt, so they'd be starting a new country already broke, with no currency, no credit rating, and no anthem unless someone wants to set economic collapse to music. Then there's the fact that our only real economic commodity is oil, because the province refuses to fucking diversify, which, as you know, is at the mercy of global markets. So even if Alberta went rogue, we would still be stuck in the same boom and bust roller coaster we've been trapped in forever, except now without Ottawa to help keep us afloat, like they did in 2008, 2009, 2016, 2018, and 2020. Some fringe voices, presumably drunk on maple-scented moonshine, float the idea of joining the United States. Except doing so would mean losing universal healthcare, adopting broken American gun laws, and having even less political influence than we do now. Believe it or not, in Canada, Alberta holds real federal influence. We have 34 seats in Parliament, which is more than 70% of the provinces get. So if Alberta joined the US, it would get 2 Senate votes out of 100 and have to compete with 50 states for scraps of attention. And that's the best case scenario. More likely, we'd be a territory. No Senate seats, no real power, and no vote for president. Just the laws and none of the say. Look, Canada isn't perfect. And as an Albertan, I admit some of our frustrations are valid. But leaving the country isn't a solution. It's a tantrum. It swaps political influence for international punchlines, legal chaos, and a lot of very awkward phone calls to the IMF. In the end, Alberta separatism is like a kid threatening to run away from home because they can't stay up late. They pack a hoodie and a granola bar, but they're not going anywhere. Why? Because they have no plan, no money, and no idea how the world works. And honestly, most of the people screaming about separatism understand politics and economics about as well as a 6-year-old. Maybe less.